Welcome to episode 84 of The Route, presented by Jobs in Sports. The Route is a glorified sports business coffee chat that has a new guest every episode as they share their experiences and route in sports. I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. As always, before we bring on the guest, just a couple things to cover. Beforehand, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast or follow, depending on what platform you're on. Um, you know, Fortunately, we're pretty evenly split on Google, Apple, Spotify, and I believe Anchor and some others. So if you haven't already, just subscribe, follow, rate 5 stars. I believe on Apple you can do that. This helps the podcast become more discoverable and reach more listeners. So maybe they can have an easier time getting to the world of sports. And then building on that as well, if you notice over here, it says at the Route Sports. You can check us out on all social media. So that's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And considering the conversation we're having in the audience we have, LinkedIn's a great place to maybe start your network or even just see the conversations that are being had or what guests we're chatting with. So check us out there at the Route Sports. You can see it up here, all one word. And that's about it. And with that said, we can now get to today's guest. So, today's guest is a perfect example of a route showcasing how to climb the ladder in sports. So, from starting with an internship at the Texas Legends to customer support at the Oklahoma City Dodgers, to the OKC Thunder, Dallas Mavericks, San Francisco 49ers, Santa Cruz Warriors, and now the director of premium hospitality at the San Jose Sharks, Jonathan White. Welcome to the route. How's it going?
Doing well, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining me this morning. The way I like to start every single podcast, pretty simple. What the name of the podcast, take us through your route. So, where did it begin in regards to maybe school, and how did we get here today?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Honestly, a bit of an untraditional path, I guess, so to say, to get to where I am in the sports industry now, where I think most of my colleagues that were coming in that I work with, even here at the Sharks, sort of went to school with the intention of working in the sports industry, knew they wanted to get into ticket sales, marketing, whatever it is. I'm the exact opposite. So I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, and I went to the University of Oklahoma for college. I'm a proud Sooner. But when I went to Oklahoma and when I was getting ready to go there, I had no interest or desire or even thought that working in the sports industry was something realistic for me. And so before I ended up joining Oklahoma, I had an opportunity, as you mentioned, since I'm from Frisco, Texas, to join the Texas Legends. And really that was just seen as, my first job ever. It was, to me, better than waiting tables or working retail or something like that. And so I grew up playing basketball throughout high school, and the opportunity to do anything from a professional standpoint, to work for a sports team was something that was of real interest to me. And so I did that opportunity, had a lot of fun, a good time, good experience, but was nothing that I foresaw as a path forward for me long term by any means whatsoever. And so when I eventually got to Oklahoma, I went as a supply chain management major. So again, something completely different from what I'm currently doing here in sports. And when I did that, I was at Oklahoma for about 2.5 years, and it really just didn't feel like a fit for me long term. And so I did decide, which I don't recommend for folks still in college, to change my major during my junior year of college, so pretty late in the game, to something that I just thought better aligned with my skills and abilities as a student at the time. So I ended up switching to public relations and communications as a minor. And during that transition, I ended up finding yet another opportunity that, again, sort of to me beat waiting tables, respectfully, or a retail or something like that, just to get another experience on the books. And that's where I found the Oklahoma City Dodgers. So in that role, I was tasked with, really helping with engaging our fans and helping out with fan experiences. I was dancing on the dugout, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Like I was doing everything in between. But again, it was just seen as another job, right? Like I'd already done one thing in sports, and so I thought, oh, maybe I'll do another one. I sort of had a bit of a trend starting on my resume, and so from there, during the summer heading into the back half of my junior year, there was an opportunity to join the sports management club as coincidentally the PR major. And so I thought, well, this will be great, but it was strictly to hone in on my skills and abilities in PR because that was my focus. So I joined that club. Of course, the first meeting of the year for us VP of ticketing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, a new shiny new toy in town in Oklahoma City. I thought, well, this is pretty cool. I didn't know anything about ticket sales or suites or premium. I knew nothing about that industry. And so once I had that meeting and went up and introduced myself, he's still the VP there, Scott Loft, phenomenal person. Sort of opened my eyes to what this industry had to offer. And from there, everything sort of took off, right? And, I blinked and now I've been with a handful of professional sports teams over the past few years. And it's been an incredible ride so far. And now I'm entering season 3 here with the Sharks and looking forward to an exciting season.
Yeah, I know it's just the beginning of Route, but there's so many things I already want to kind of get into, and then as we get on, we can kind of dive into each of these positions. But the first thing I want to ask, because you just touched on this, and considering a lot of the people listening are people in school or recently graduated or kind of maybe just finishing up their college or university degrees. You mentioned you don't recommend switching in junior, and I believe that's third year university. Do you mind maybe sharing why that is?
Yeah, it just put me behind the 8 ball, candidly. And, a lot of my friends, you're getting into your focused courses for like your major specifically. And so for me, I had to start from scratch 3 years into college. And so that was really, really challenging. And so I had to start doing summer school, and I lived in Norman now full time because I had to just, get as many hours in as I could for classes so I could just remotely get caught up to my peers that were also at the same grade level as me. And so I didn't get to go home back to Texas for the rest of really my life until I went back to the Mavericks, because I had to take 18, 20 hours of school, whatever it is. And then I was taking 12 hours of classes during the summer. And so I was taking school year round, which wasn't fun, but I had to do it just to get back on track. And so I don't regret the decision. It's the best thing I ever did for myself, because I was headed down a path that just was not going to work out for me personally. And so, I recommend trying to identify when you need to change courses as quickly as possible. And personally, I think I put that off a bit too far. So yeah, I mean, you have to do what's best for you at the end of the day, no matter what time it is. But for me, I do wish it came maybe a year or two earlier, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. I switched, I believe, from accounting to marketing at the end of my second year, maybe officially was third, but in a Bachelor of Commerce, at least in Canada, the first 2 years are all introductory. Everyone's kind of doing the same courses. And like you said, that's when you kind of get into your course specific. So transition was smooth. I wasn't really delayed or anything. So I understand from that perspective. But were you also maybe mentioning that? Because I know when I was growing up, my dad also had a BCom. And the one thing he always said was, get your degree and get experience. That's the only thing he kept pushing. He was like, the degree is good and opens doors, and you learn some things. But he's like, what really matters is experience. And that's one of the things that he meant where, hey, maybe it's not always, how do you say this? Useful. I don't know if useful is the best word. Prolonging your university career, but maybe, hey, get a degree, because once you kind of, get into the world of work, it's really about, hey, what can you do there? Because it's not always going to be, hey, what was your marketing calculus or introduction to management, right?
Right. Well, I 1000% agree. My parents both sort of drilled that into my head at a very young age, and that's sort of where I got a lot of the drive from. Was certainly from both of them. And you're spot on, right? At some point, it just came to, you just need to graduate, right? Like, you need to get that piece of paper. You need to walk across the stage. But at the same time, to your point, you need to start getting some professional experience on your resume. And so, again, although me singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" at the Oklahoma City Dodgers, beautiful park in downtown Oklahoma City, wasn't something that was tailor-made to my degree that I just shifted to in PR. It was some professional experience. It was something else that I was doing. And so now I have a PR degree. I occasionally use it. I write a lot of copy these days in my current role, but that degree has nothing to do with where I landed today. And so the professional experiences that I got at the Legends and the Dodgers and the Thunder, even as a part-time employee, that shaped my career far more than me taking PR courses did in college. And so, yeah, you're right. At some point, you got to take the plunge. You got to graduate. You got to choose a path forward. But understand that really the biggest impact is going to be those experiences, internships, people that you meet, the networking that takes place on your journey to the finish line.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Where, I'm thankful and glad I have the degree that I do. But I remember when I first got my real experience, right? I went to go work for a hockey startup, and then I went to work for a soccer team. And they're like, Chris, go ahead, do your marketing thing, make us a strategy, do a campaign. I was like, okay, what should I do, guys? And they're like, you tell me, you're the one with the marketing degree. And I was like, huh, interesting. Because in school, they taught you so much theory, and it was really kind of learning on the job, like we were saying, right? Where if I prolonged that degree or went to go get a master's in marketing, I still would have never figured out afterwards how to actually build marketing strategy or actually, come up with these creative problem solving tactics, right? So
Right.
I 100% agree with you there. And now kind of going back to the beginning round, we'll kind of go through the flow of it. It was interesting how you mentioned your first job with Texas Legends. You just kind of viewed it as a first job, because similar to me, my first job was at the football stadium here in Ottawa, and I was working in parking, right? I was like, oh, you know what? I enjoy sports. It'd be cool to work at the stadium. And I never really thought twice about it. And
Right.
then, since I was in accounting, I was like, you know what? I got to get accounting experience, real experience. And then that's when I realized, hey, you know what? That's the work environment, and that's what I love so much. And that's kind of what pulled me back into the world of sports, where I never really thought it would, propelled it into a career, but
Yeah.
everything makes sense. So
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, the Legends experience was great. I didn't even get paid. They actually paid us in food, which was great because I was like a college student. So that was all I needed when I was 18 years old. And so I worked game days. I helped out with games and drills and activities. And the Texas Legends have like the best fan experience I've ever seen for any team. And so they do a really good job. So it was awesome to be a part of. But yeah, that internship ended, and I thought, well, okay, time to go back to school now. Like now I'm going to go focus on supply chain management. Like it was cool to have on my resume, but not anything that I thought would come to fruition. Sort of the same thing with the Dodgers, but to your point, that's when the light bulb started to flicker a little bit in my head, because while I was running around doing these games and activities, and again, another phenomenal organization, I started to look around and think, oh, this would be cool full time. Maybe not the role I'm in today. I didn't think that was necessarily for me, but I started to look around me, and I would see folks walking around in suits and, doing, just doing things that I knew was not what I was doing with like these games and stuff. And I thought, what's going on over here? Like they were clearly folks in marketing and in sales and stuff like that. And I thought, I don't know what they're necessarily doing over there, but they're at a game just like me. And this looks like a pretty cool place to start a career as well. And so I started to do some digging. And when I got to the Thunder, the whole, like, my whole world changed when I got there, because it was an entry level sales job, part-time. I worked game days only, but I started to learn about inside sales and account executives and the whole sales process and selling suites and experiences. And I thought, this is it. Like I'd found it. Like I'd never been happier in my life. That I felt like I'd discovered gold. It was just like, I can't believe that this is a path, and I am actually doing things right now to put me on a trajectory to accomplish this. Everything else was irrelevant at that point. Like I was still in school. I felt so bad for my classmates, because like all my PR classes and projects, I were just like second fiddle, because all I cared about was sports ticket sales. That was it. And so everything I had done from that point on was all towards, making it in this industry and sports ticketing.
That's an interesting point that you mentioned there, because I don't know, I think we're on episode 84 now, and the theme I kind of see in chatting with all these people within the industry, it almost seems as though the people that become successful or actually make a career out of the sports industry, they aren't the people that kind of, what would be the best word, I don't know, fanboy about working for a sports team, right? Where maybe people are like, hey, I'm the biggest, let's use Ottawa for example, I'm the biggest Senators fan, I love the Sens, I want to go work for the Senators, right? Because I'm the biggest fan. Or more so, the theme kind of seems to be, hey, people who enjoy sports, they just happen to be like, this would be a cool first job, or something like that. And then like you, it just kind of happens organically, right? Where like even for myself, I wanted to go work in accounting, and I went to go work for the government X, Y, Z, and then I was like, oh, I think I could sports, and then I got connected with a startup. One thing led to another, and it just kind of happens, and you kind of see it from a different perspective, where you see it more as a business, right? You're treating your position as, hey, we have goals to accomplish, rather than, oh wow, like I'm working for the Yankees or the Red Sox, right? Where you actually view it as a real career, rather than, oh, this is a dream. Like every day is just gold for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, as a hiring manager, that's normally a red flag for me, honestly, right? If I'm in the interview process and someone just can't stop talking about, oh, I love the Warriors, I grew up watching the Warriors, like I love the Niners, I love the Sharks, and like that's all that we're talking about. yeah, that's great,
Yeah.
but you don't have to work for your favorite team necessarily. And so we want you in it for the right reasons. It's great that you're a fan, and look, when the marriage comes together and you so happen to have the same passion for the business and it's coincidentally your favorite team, congratulations. Like, that's fantastic, and that's okay too, but that can't be the reason why you're going to work for these teams. And so I think when I first got into the industry, and I was certainly guilty of this, people would always ask me, my biggest fandom is with the Lakers. I have no problem saying that. And so my friends always used to ask, like, where do you want to work? What's the goal? Like, is the goal always the Lakers? And when I was in inside sales, I was 21 years old. Of course, I said, yes, like, that's all I want to do. I want to work for the Lakers. I want to work for the Lakers. But at some point, you've got to take a step back and realize that the logos and the clout that comes along with working with some of these brands, like, hey, it's fantastic, but it cannot be the driving force behind you working somewhere. It needs to be about the people. It needs to be about the opportunity, the leadership. Are they going to put you in the best position to succeed? And is this role the best position for you? I could go work for the Lakers tomorrow, but if that role doesn't align with something that's going to push me and set me up for success, and the leadership team isn't the same, that working for the Lakers isn't going to be that cool for very long, right? And so that cannot be sort of the North Star for your decision making in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, I think the podcast that came out, the one just before this, episode 83, amazing guest, Therese, and she kind of mentioned that where she got her MBA, she was a gold medalist beforehand, and when she wanted to go get her MBA, the way she kind of decided on where to work first, even though she wanted to be in sports, was, hey, who's going to develop me the best in game, provide me the best skills? And that's what she was recommending to those listening, where, initially, like you're saying, the Lakers would be the dream, or Yankees, Red Sox, Cowboys, whoever the people are fans of. But maybe you got to go for the person you're going to be working underneath, right? When who can you learn from actually provide value to your career? Where then once you move on from that position, then you can kind of start blossoming. So that does make sense. And another thing you touched on, and I think this kind of works. You're saying as maybe sometimes the hiring manager, and you're interviewing candidates. What are some things that you can kind of maybe share for those listening? Because a lot of people are, entering the last year of university listening, or they just graduated, or they're in their first couple of years and they have to take the next step in their career. What is something that you would recommend in regards to interviews, right? Like, hey, people that do this, they typically stand out, or hey, these are the people who see the most, value.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the misconception is that we're always looking for a finished product when we're going through the interview process, and that's not necessarily the case. I'm not the best manager in the world, not even close, and I certainly, don't know everything there is to know about sports ticketing and premium and all that stuff, like, not even close. But for us, we're looking for more intangibles than it is necessarily the hard skills for sales, for example, when we're going through the interview process. And what I mean by that is, I'm looking for someone that's going to give me some signals that they're a good teammate, that they're open to coaching, they're open to feedback. Like, that stuff to me is far more impactful in the short amount of time that we have for a brief conversation in an interview than something else that might be said. And so normally, for example, like, I'll go and do a role play with candidates who are coming in for sales jobs, for example. And so when they go through that, one of the things that I'll try to do is I'll try to get them to give themselves coaching. Like, what could they improve on and do better? I've seen candidates that will say, essentially, nope, that was perfect, that was good, I wouldn't change anything. And then I've had other candidates that'll say, oh, I could have worked on this, and even take it a step further and say, what do you think I could have done better, Jonathan? To me, that is so impactful, because that shows me you're open to coaching, you're open to feedback, and you also know that you're not a finished product and you still have room to improve. We're on the flip side, for those that just say, nope, that was great, and sort of shrug it off. Like, I can do a role play today. I've been in the industry for 10 years. It's not going to be perfect. And there's going to be things that I need to do better. And so to me, I just look for small things like that to sort of tell me how you might respond to feedback and coaching. And, do you have humility when you're going into a role like this? And so that's sort of what I'm looking for. So be open to that stuff, understand that no one's perfect, and be able to recognize and know what you don't know, because that's also important to succeed in any role as well. So
yeah, that's a thing. It's interesting, right? Speaking to all these different people, how it's always the almost, like, the small things you wouldn't necessarily think of that kind of always stick out in every episode, right? And that's kind of one of the things I've noticed even more recently, in regards to actual hiring, right? Because people are finishing their degrees or they're looking for jobs now with season starting, and that's something that's been sticking out in a couple episodes now. What people are saying it's intangibles, right? Where sometimes people go in an interview and they're like, okay, I've worked in this position, I've done this, we've done this much in numbers, but in reality, something that like you've said and others have said now too is they're almost kind of reading in between the lines, right? We're like, hey, can this person be coached? Or hey, can they work well on a team? Or hey, are they self-aware? Where hey, sometimes they do need help, right? So that's pretty interesting because I think as a student, when you are a student and you're thinking about your first position, you get so wrapped up of hey, I'm competing with in sports 100 other candidates. How am I going to stick out? I have to have the best numbers, the best results, the best experience, the best resume. And it's sometimes just being true to yourself and have an understanding of what that is. So I'm sure that's very valuable for those listening.
Yep,
For
absolutely.
myself, that's exactly back to that. And I'm kind of going back to your career and kind of going through the flows of that. So as you were mentioning, I think the last one we talked about was in regards to working with the Thunder, right? So you've had an amazing opportunity to work with all these different teams and even different sports. What are some things that you kind of noticed that is different between the different teams and even sports, right? Do you maybe sell differently? Do you notice that maybe all these different leagues and clubs have similar processes, or what's something that kind of sticks out?
Yeah, I think that the transition between team to team and even league to league, I think is a lot easier than most people would realize. And I can only really speak to sales for the most part, but most processes are essentially the same. And so, by the time I sort of got my feet under me at the Thunder, making the transition to go to the Dallas Mavericks was pretty seamless to me. Like the only difference in my job was I had to learn a new market, which I was already familiar with because I'm from the Dallas Fort Worth area. I had to learn the team. They're going to have different pricing, and it's a different arena, different seating, different experiences that I have to leverage for sales opportunities. But my sales process was the exact same, honestly. And so, really the biggest difference for me was going league to league is, likely the assets that you have to sell as just a ticket sales representative. And so I went from getting to leverage, a basketball court where I could sell, youth sports teams, time to be able to play basketball on the court, either pre or post game after a Mavs game, to now when I made the transition to the 49ers, there's a lot of red tape, with touching the field. And so I don't have that in my back pocket to sell, field access and things like that, because that just wasn't aligned with something that the organization wanted to do, which is completely fine. And so we had to find new ways to leverage opportunities for sales. And so instead of selling, a pregame basketball game experience on the Mavericks court, we started leveraging field passes so we could sell those to groups to try to drive sales. So we could give access to folks to watch warm-ups on the field pregame. That's not something I had in the NBA, right? Now I'm in hockey, which is completely different from both of those, where I don't have a court or a field. Now I have ice. And so now, we're targeting youth hockey teams for the most part, where we can sell ice time, we can sell post-game slap shots on the ice and things like that. So again, the experiences are going to change and those assets a little bit but from a sales standpoint, the story is the same. We're selling an experience. We're not selling wins. We're not selling losses. We're not selling the ups and downs and all that stuff. If you get caught up in that, you're going to be in a heap of trouble really quickly, because not every team wins a championship, obviously, every year. And so if that's what you're reliant on to have sales success, you're unlikely to last very long, right? And so when I was in Dallas, we had a point, I think we were last in the league. When I was at the Niners, we were the worst team in the league. That can't be a factor in your sales success. It has to be the experience of coming out to Levi Stadium, coming out to SAP Center, and what that experience can bring, for you and your group.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Where I believe when I was in school and I was kind of looking at what positions I can get into, one of the advice that was given on that note is that working for a team that was in last place was that's where you kind of learn the most and even develop the best, because if your team's in first and people are just going for the wins, you're not really learning, you're actually providing a great experience. So you have these amazing assets. People are just going to hey, we're winning, we want to go there. But in reality, when you actually develop like these sales skills, or if your marketing campaigns are actually working, is when the team's dead last, and it's actual value that you're providing there. So that's some advice that I got that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's. Oh, go ahead.
No, go that's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. It's spot on, right? Like it's I'm not gonna say anything in sports ticketing is easy because nothing is. But yeah, if you're selling a Super Bowl contending team or a team that just won the cup, or if you're a Milwaukee Bucks employee right now that just won the championship, like yeah, is your day going to be a little bit smoother than someone else? Probably, right? You get to a point to where the phone's sort of ringing off the hook. The craziest day I've ever had in sports was the day that we traded for Jimmy Garoppolo when I was at the 49ers. We weren't in a great spot again. We were the last team in the league. We were just terrible. I think we were 0-8 or something crazy. And we landed really the top quarterback that we realistically could get at the time midseason. And we were in the office. It was probably 6 o'clock at night when the trade went down. And so normally we go home, around 6 or 7. And it was chaos in the office. I mean, the phone literally would not stop ringing, and it went on the rest of the season. And it was like, if folks didn't answer the phone, you really didn't even have time to call them back. I mean, it was just like you were just picking up the phone, transacting, sale, sale, sale. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, and I likely never will again. And so yeah, that was easy, right? Like that was just insane what we had witnessed. And my friends at other sports teams at the time, did not have it like that, right? So that's the beauty of sports, is you can have one thing happen, and it's a career changing move sometimes for us on the business side. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, enough, I'm a Patriots fan, so I do remember that too. That experience also kind of reminds me of we had a guest from the Bundesliga, right? And I believe it was director of corporate partnerships or something like that. And maybe Europe they have relegation, so kind of similar experience where if they didn't win a certain game, they were going to go down to the second league. And he was telling me about the experience where, a typical day, let's say 9 to 6, whatever, you're kind of going about the ebbs and flows of your day. But this particular day, there's so much on the line, and similar to maybe the Jimmy G trade where it had such a big impact where they finally won, and then it was like a big celebration. But if they lost, it would have been like the end of the world. So it's pretty interesting the crazy experiences that take place in sports.
Yeah.
And some of the questions I kind of have here in regards to some of the things you were saying was in regards to maybe the different assets, right? You're talking about how in basketball, you could maybe provide a pregame asset of playing on the court, or maybe on-field passes, or maybe youth hockey. I know in Canada we do intermission games sometimes for the youth hockey. With your experience across all these different teams and leagues, was there maybe an asset that kind of sticks out to you, or like, what, I think that's the best asset in pro sports that I've seen so far, where it actually provides the fan with the best experience, whether it's actually just, I don't know, you tell me.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned, honestly, we called it Court of Dreams in the NBA, where you would have the opportunity to play a game, either pre or post game, was by far the coolest experience that I would ever get to be a part of. I mean, just think, like, again, I grew up playing basketball, huge NBA fan, and we would sell these experiences to local schools who have the opportunity to take one of their in-season games. Like, it wasn't just like a free-for-all. Like, we would take and move one of their high school games during the summer before the school year started. We would work with athletic directors, and we would organize one of their games to be played at American Airlines Center, at Chesapeake Energy Arena in Oklahoma. Like, that was insanely cool to be a part of. And I was jealous, and to get to do that in Texas. I mean, we used to work with my school district that I actually went elementary through high school with, and to see them come out and play a game there was like, man, why didn't this happen when I went to school? So that was always a really, really special experience, just to see folks sitting on the Mavericks bench, going through warm-ups, playing a game. I mean, we've got the scoreboard going. I mean, it's a game. We operate it just like an NBA game.
Sure.
Their parents are in the stands. We open up. There's several hundred people there. Like that's once in a lifetime type stuff that we would get to do. And now I would say with hockey, same rules apply. It's still once in a lifetime here at the Shark Tank. The high five line is always a really cool one to get to do. I mean, to be able to take kids or folks and see them get to high five their idol, their favorite player, is, you kind of can't put a price on that sometimes, right? So those are the experiences that keep us going, and what makes this job so cool and so special. And it makes every night different and refreshing, and you get to experience that 44 times out of the year, hopefully more. And that's the beauty of this industry. So
yeah, no, and it's funny enough because when I played youth hockey growing up, the times we would practice at the junior hockey arena in Gatineau across the river here, I still even remember just flipping the puck across the boards, into the penalty box, and you're in the dressing room where Claude Giroux and all these different legends have played, and something that I never forget. And unfortunately, I never got the chance to skate on the Sens ice because I think that would be a cool experience. But like you said, for kids and people growing up, that's an experience you never forget, right? So I definitely see the value in that. And this question is kind of similar, but maybe a little different in regards to talking about selling an experience, right? So obviously, I'm Canadian. I'm very much in tune with hockey, right? That's what I'm always looking at, and especially with the new expansion franchises and the Golden Knights, the Kraken now, really kind of pushing these experiences and entertainment that's providing. When it's in hockey or even other sports that you've said or seen and worked in, do you find there's maybe one sport that has the best in-game experience, right? It's not necessarily what your assets you can add on top of tickets, but people are going to a game and best bang for the buck, like, hey, this is a show, even beyond what's happening on the ice or quarter.
Yeah, I'd be remiss to not say the Sharks do an incredible job of what they do, and I think what we do better than any team I've ever seen is sort of our pregame festivities. Our production team is, to me, the best in the industry, and it's really not close. We do a pregame light show that is normally historically saved for the playoffs for us, but it's sort of taken on a life of its own. And so we had it for opening night last Saturday, and we invested in some new technology in the stands. So we have permanent fixed lights at every chair in the building. And so we can do this, essentially year round, but it's become like a thing. You have to come to SAP Center pregame to watch the light show, certainly during the playoffs, but for opening night, we were trying our best to get folks in the building so they could see it. I think it's available online. It's actually on our Twitter account. Folks can see what it looked like, but that was incredible. But I also think minor league sports doesn't get enough credit for what they do for fan experiences as well, because the draw to come out to those games has to be more so around the experience as opposed to the wins and the losses and the players and the team, because it's minor league sports, right? You're not coming out for the star power to come see superstar players that are playing at the pro level. It has to be about, am I going to have the most fun? Am I going to get the most value out of coming out to this game? And so again, the teams that I've worked for, coincidentally, I've just had luck and worked for some of the best teams in the leagues, but Texas Legends, phenomenal job. One of the best teams in the G League, not even close, perhaps the best at just sort of creating the best family atmosphere, fun. I mean, I've never been to a sports event where kids are just running around free without their parents. That's the environment that the Texas Legends have created, because there's games, there's just all sorts of stuff to do, and they've created a safe place for folks to be able to do it. And so they've had the best family-centric environment I've ever seen. Santa Cruz Warriors, we would do a phenomenal job as well, right? We would have really engaging halftime performances, in-game activations, giveaway items at the door and stuff like that really honed in on the experience as opposed to wins and losses. Didn't hurt that I was a part of the Warriors organization, and so every once in a while Steph Curry would pop his head into a game at least once a year, and that would certainly drive some interest our way. But the experience had to be top notch, because that had to be the reason that folks were coming to the game, because they just, that it wasn't to see their favorite player at Golden State. They had to go to San Francisco for that. We had to create the best experience possible in Santa Cruz. So.
Yeah, no, of course, that makes a lot of sense. And it's nice that this podcast is kind of going to flow with the questions that I have ready in mind now. And the other thing I kind of want to build off of that is, you're talking about opening night, and actually, it sounds like I'm going to go check it out on Twitter right after we chat. But I know in this case it's a little different, but at least in Canada, as early or as late as 2 days ago, Vancouver Canucks said full capacity. I think it's last in the NHL. And obviously, some teams in the NHL here in Canada haven't been able to, their full capacity, but haven't been able to sell out, right? Because people aren't comfortable maybe yet going back. What are some things, you mentioned the light show? What are some things that you're noticing to maybe get fans more comfortable coming out. Obviously, you need to be vaccinated and things like that to get into the stadium now. But are there any kind of, I don't know, campaigns or strategies that you guys are kind of putting forth, where maybe you're opening extra doors, or one of the things we chatted about yesterday on another podcast that I do is maybe partnering with like Uber Eats and having you order concession on your phone and they go straight to your chair, because one of the things I was reading online was people were not comfortable with how much people were shoulder to shoulder at the concessions, right? So I was curious what kind of things you're noticing in regards to making people comfortable going back to games.
Right. My boss is probably going to kill me because I can't remember the exact slogan for our campaign that we started during the summer, but it was essentially framed around what you just referenced, and we had a couple of buzzwords that were essentially your safe return back to SAP Center. And so that was our messaging all summer long as we reopened the building. We were arguably in one of the toughest spots in all of sports over the past year, because we've had pretty strict restrictions out here in Northern California. And so if for those that were paying attention, when we started the 2020-21 season, we actually could not play in Santa Clara. So we had to play in Arizona to start our season. So we were not even playing in the Bay Area, which was crazy. And oddly enough, the Warriors were permitted to play at home because they were in a different county up in San Francisco. And so it was just a really odd situation, because like our team is in the desert in Arizona, and Golden State's playing 40 minutes up the road, and that was okay. And so it was just a challenging process for us. And eventually, about a month in, the team was permitted to come back to the Bay Area, which is great. We weren't allowed to have fans in the building, and then we finally started to open it back up, and sort of in waves, we progressively allowed more fans back into SAP Center, which was phenomenal. But all summer long, like our season ticket campaign, group sales campaign was all around, your safe and healthy return to SAP Center. And we've done a phenomenal job with reopening the building. We had to go through a phase of, doing rapid testing outside SAP Center in April and May as we closed out last season to allow entry into the building. And now that we've hit October 21st, we're a vaccination mandated building. And so we've partnered with Clear and their Fast Pass technology. So they're able to, provide us with the best and swiftest entry into the building for all of our fans. And so that's one thing that we've done. And we've maintained our mask mandate in the building as well, and unless you're in a confined space like I am right now, or eating and drinking. And so everything that we're doing is to not only welcome fans back into the building so they can experience live Sharks hockey, but to make sure that we're giving them the safest experience to be able to do so. And a kudos to not me, to our guest experience team and our building operations team for putting together, I think, the best experience possible for our fans right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm sure one of the things as well, where obviously the States was a little different maybe than the last season, you guys were starting to have people in the stands, and maybe as well, it's just time people getting more comfortable in regards to seeing people that they don't know anymore and seeing strangers in public. So it makes a lot of sense. And one of the final I'd like to get before we wrap up the podcast is, we've talked about your different positions that you have. So maybe you mind sharing, specifically your position now. Maybe sharing like the day-to-day and what it's like, maybe people can have a better understanding of what the day in the life of a director of premium hospitality is like in the NHL.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, when I first came to the Sharks, I was overseeing group ticket sales and that functional unit. So primary task there was really creating fan experiences, but really moving bulk tickets in the arena. So we would partner with local colleges like San Jose State, Stanford, Cal, schools like that, nonprofits, churches, organizations like that can move hundreds, if not thousands, of tickets for us on a game-by-game basis. And so that was my main priority, with the team, and I handled that for the Sharks, the Barracuda, our AHL team, and then any SAP Center arena event that allowed group tickets. So we actually have Disney on Ice that's here now, and they'll be here the rest of the weekend. So we'll handle selling group tickets for events like that to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and the likes. During the pandemic, my role evolved a bit to oversee suite lease sales and service. And so really a completely different department where our main priority is selling and servicing multi-year suite leases here in the building that have access to all, call it 120 or so arena events here at the building. So our main priority is really working with high net worth individuals or primarily businesses to find solutions for their companies. Primarily, we're used for client entertainment, prospects, and the like to utilize our suites for that. And so that department sells, renews services, and goes out and has a strong outbound sales effort for suites. So my day right now is a little all over the place, to be honest. I mean, I have mornings where I'm on a call talking to a nonprofit, or I'm on talking to the Boy Scouts or something like that, and maybe an hour later I'm on talking to the head of marketing for a construction company here locally in the Bay Area to talk about their multi-year suite lease. So sort of juggling a lot of hats right now, but it's our department essentially at its core is responsible for any hospitality space in the building, and so it all funnels up through one department now. So that's a weird answer, but my day is strange right now, to be honest.
That's good stuff. It does, it provides different insight in, what it's like. And, that's kind of the team sports here, where it's never always going to be the same thing every day. So that's pretty interesting.
Yep.
And the final two questions I like to ask you as well in regards to the end of the podcast. The first one, we'll kind of go into the future. 103-year-old Jonathan on your rocking chair, and you're thinking about your career, right? Looking back on it, what is something so far, because you've had so many different experiences with all these clubs and leagues, what is one experience so far that you've had in your career that's going to stick out when you're 103, you're like, wow, I can't believe I got to do that for work?
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, my experience working with the Warriors, I highly doubt will ever be topped in my career. And if it does, then I'm having a heck of a career. When I joined the Santa Cruz Warriors, and I mentioned it briefly before, we were very much a part of Golden State. And so we were fortunate to have our parent club, 60 miles away from us. But not only that, we had a club that was very much invested in the development, not just of the players in the G League, but of the front office staff. And so the Warriors is a first-class organization. They do a phenomenal job, and their success on and off the court is not a surprise to anyone, I don't think. But when I joined them, they were actually in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And this was when, they're in the midst of the dynasty. Steph, Clay, Draymond, Kevin Durant was there. I mean, we had a pretty good team. And so when I joined, we actually went on the run and ended up winning the championship that year. And so what had turned into a tradition for Warriors employees is every June they're sort of used to hopping on a plane and getting to fly to one of the finals games. And so although we were the G League team and not, a part of Golden State, they would always take care of us. And I was always very grateful for that. And so here I am probably 3 weeks on the job, and I'm on a plane heading to Cleveland for game 4 of the finals with us up 3-0. Private plane, whole staff is on it. We fly to Cleveland. They have a wonderful reception for us at a hotel downtown, eating, drinking. We're up 3-0 in the series, as I mentioned. So we're sort of prepared to win the whole thing. And so they give us all tickets to the game. We go to Quicken Loans Arena that night. And it's a blowout. Although I'm a Lakers fan, it was hard seeing LeBron go down like that. But we won, and it was just incredible what happened, not just that night, but the days after. So we ended up having like an impromptu party downstairs in the arena. We went to a local bar downtown and got to celebrate there as well. We flew back that night. So now we're getting back on a plane, flying back to Oakland at, I don't know, 2 a.m, something like that. And, we're exhausted. We've been up since like 4. We get back, we get the day off work the next day, and then probably that next Monday or Tuesday, we have the parade. So now we all go back to Oakland. We're walking in the parade. There's celebrities there. The team is there. I mean, it was just an insane experience. And then, you just sort of ride that wave all summer long of like, we just won a championship. And the really special thing about the Santa Cruz market is how closely tied we were to Golden State. And so we were Golden State to the folks that lived down in Santa Cruz. And so although we didn't win a championship in Santa Cruz, it felt like it, right? Like ticket sales reflected that. The fandom reflected that. The demand did. The buzz in the arena did. And so we very much were the Warriors, and took great advantage of that opportunity and had a really good season at the G League level. So I doubt anything will top that. that's a once in a lifetime experience. It's not why you work in sports, but damn, when you get that opportunity, it really sort of brings you full circle as to why you do what you do. So
Yeah, not a bad word for working in sports, right? That's an amazing experience. And I actually went to a Warriors game a couple of years ago. I think it was the season before KD went. And even though it was like the old Oracle, right? Before it was a little old, but that experience alone, crazy. I went with my dad. I never went to a basketball game before in the NBA, and I was shocked. Like I was like, wow, this is unreal. And I went to a Celtics game 2 years ago before the pandemic. Nothing like it. Not even close to how good that experience was. Where I still remember they're running up with dominoes into the stands, and I was like, what is this, right? So it was an unreal time. So I can see how that organization was top class.
Yeah, it's been a special run here in the Bay Area. In Oracle, we called it Roracle because it was just so loud. I mean, I went to a finals game there their last year as well, and it was like the crazy overtime game where LeBron had like a 50-point triple double, and the Warriors ended up winning by like one in overtime. I mean, I was like in pain. It was so loud in that arena. And I was actually like literally in the last row of the arena. Like I could like touch the championship banners if I stood up.
Yeah.
And it was just the loudest environment I've ever been in my life. So special time that the Warriors are in. I'm glad to see them move over to Chase Center, obviously, and they're still doing pretty good, I'd say. So heck of an organization. I'm certainly happy to have been a part of them for a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the last question, right? So right before we went to the future, now let's go into the past. We're talking to an 18-year-old Jonathan, just starting as a freshman at Oklahoma. What is something that you would like to provide to him in regards to advice, whether it's career or life, that you wish you knew when you were 18 that you know now?
Take risks. Don't be afraid to do something that scares you. I think it's the biggest thing. I think it's really easy to stay comfortable in the industry and be afraid to switch teams or move across the country or take on a role that you don't feel like you're necessarily prepared for. That's okay. And I tell my staff all the time, and I've seen a lot of reps come and I've seen a lot of reps go. My advice to them every time they tell me they're looking at an opportunity is, does it scare you? And if they say yes, then they now have my support for something like this. If they say no, then I don't know if this is necessarily worth the plunge to look into. And so moving across country is scary. I've done it. I moved here without knowing anyone in the world in the Bay Area. It was the best decision I ever made. I didn't know anyone when I went to Oklahoma. I was scared to leave home, although that was my dream school. That's where I wanted to go. Like I remember when my parents drove off and left me at my apartment, I was like, what have I done? I had done the best decision of my life. So don't be afraid to take risks. Apply for jobs, roles that are bigger than you think, and just take risks in your career. I think is the best thing I would advise myself and anyone else coming up in the industry. So
That's a great way to end the podcast. Where it's funny enough when you said you got dropped off at Oklahoma, what did I do? I had the exact same frame of mind when I moved out for the first time. And we finished, putting all my furniture in my parents' left. And I was in my bed the first time, like, what did I do? Right? And it's funny enough, that's the exact same rating that you had. But that's a great way to end the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time and, sharing some amazing insight. I have my notebook full as usual, so that's amazing. Unless there's anything else you'd like to share, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris. Yeah, thank you for having me, and congrats, obviously, on episode 84. Really enjoyed the time and appreciative of you selecting me to join us. Certainly for anyone out there, like I'm open to conversations and helping any way that I can. So best place to reach me is likely on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out, add me, and if a call makes sense to continue a conversation, I'm always happy to do it. So don't be a stranger.
Yeah, that's amazing. And hopefully, people reach out because obviously there's some good insight available. But yeah, thank you.
Great. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chris.